I'm Michelle Gussow, and this is something straight out of my mind.
So a few videos ago, I talk about one of my all-time favorite actors, Sal Mineo. And it was somewhat of a darker themed video, as I was discussing how I never really went along with the accepted narrative surrounding his death. Now, if you haven't had the opportunity to watch that yet, it is on my channel. It is called P.S. Sal Mineo is Dead. So again, if you haven't had the opportunity after watching this video, check it out. But today's video is more about how I came to know who Sal Mineo was, and one of my first experiences watching him, where I realized it was him. And I'm going to say it because I think he's one of those actors that turned up as a guest star on things, and I'd probably seen him without giving it any thought. And I'm going to take you back a little bit. I think it was like 1978, 1979. And there was this infomercial that came on all the time, and it was for a book called Too Young to Die. Now, it's interesting, there have been subsequent incarnations of this book where they've added people and cut some of the people who were there originally, I think, out or down to a page where they'd had a full section. So I don't know what the most recent incarnation looks like. But the original, I believe, stopped with Elvis. I don't remember with whom it started, but it basically stopped with Elvis Presley. And the commercial would list some of the people who were in the book, and that's where the name Sal Mineo came up. And it was one of those things with the narrator's voice, I can practically still hear it in my head. Sal Mineo, Sal Mineo. And he was there, and it was like, obviously toward the end. It was 1976, and then there was Freddie Prinze, and then I believe it was Elvis. And that's where the name first came up. Now, subsequently, I didn't get the book, I was going to say. I think it was years later when you didn't have to order it from TV that I found a copy. But previously to this, I actually had heard of the movie Rebel Without a Cause. Now, this is one of those movies that I think you just naturally hear of all the time. It was such an iconic movie. It was just something that always came up. Rebel Without a Cause, Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause. And I'd heard about it for so many years. But what was really interesting is the way it was served up to me. The image I had of it was, first of all, a movie that was not going to be something I'd be interested in watching. And that I wasn't certainly going to be able to relate to it in any way. But I have to say, too, the image of James Dean that I was given on this silver platter, as I said, leather jacket, motorcycles, so I'm picturing this movie as being, like all these tough motorcycle types challenging each other to, I guess it was a chickie run there, or drag races or whatever, just in this whole thing. And that eventually, my thought is that the guy who was doing all the challenging eventually would die or something. I had no idea what it was really about, but that's what it sounded like it was about. And it came on TV on a local channel one year, and it was one of those things where it's like, I know this isn't my type of movie, but it's one of these movies that everybody probably should watch once, because you keep hearing about it. Well, that is definitely where I got the surprise of my life. That, even the first time you see James Dean, and actually all the main characters, you see them in this police station. But James Dean, he's like high-strung and freaking out, and, he hasn't just been dragged into the police station because he's out speeding on a motorcycle or something. And you see these three characters with these very real, emotional, psychological, sensitive issues. So that was a surprise to me. Also, even in that scene, in that, I don't want to say scene, but series of scenes, where Jim Stark, who's the character played by James Dean, offers his coat to Plato, and Plato's character played by Sal Mineo. Yeah, and the whole thing in here, it's warm. And it's like, oh my goodness, who's a sensitive guy? This is not the person who was served up on the platter. And I ended up literally dragged into the plot of this movie. Mostly from the performance of James Dean and Sal Mineo and the chemistry they had. But as I was watching it, I was just blown away with this, well, first of all, in the plot, it didn't look anything like what I was expecting. And the characters touched me. I got, like I said, very pulled in, wrapped up in this. But it kept going, and I don't want to give away too much with this, just in case somebody hasn't seen this movie. I want people to go watch it and appreciate it without my constant input with it, or I don't want to give everything away. But I guess the end gets given away with this, so I'm going to warn you on that. But I'm watching, and it does culminate with Sal Mineo's character dying. And I remember coming away from that, just kind of staring and going, You know what? Plato is the title character. So all my life, everybody's always saying, James Dean is the rebel without a cause. James Dean is the rebel without a cause. And here I had this strange, for the norm, and maybe this in a way goes back to the other video, because I always seem to have a different view than whatever the mainstream view is. But I'm like, I think Plato is the rebel. And if anything, and maybe I was starting to get hints of that, because if anything, what sealed that deal for me was he's the one who died. And I didn't say anything about it, because I knew if I said, hey, I just finally saw a rebel without a cause, and I think Sal Mineo's character was actually the title character, being, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. That's what I thought. But I forget when, but the station aired it again, and this time we were saying my dad watched it with me. My dad had never seen it. And I didn't say anything. Credits roll at the end, and I'm kind of like, well, just looking for a reaction. And he's looking at me kind of funny. And he goes, you're going to think I'm crazy. This is my dad telling me this. But I think Sal Mineo is the title character. And I said, oh my gosh, that's it. That's what I was thinking. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to put an idea in your head. Actually, decades later, my brother-in-law watched it with me. He was seeing it for the first time. This is interesting, because he will join me on what I call certain actors that we want to watch, and we'll say whoever it is fest. So we were actually having Sal Mineo fest. And I brought over Rebel Without a Cause and didn't say anything. Watched the movie, and afterwards, he's like, I liked it. He said, but, I think Sal Mineo is the title character, not what we've heard all these years. So I've had 2 other people join me in that. There was an interview some of you might be familiar with where I guess they had given Sal Mineo the script, and they asked him, which character he preferred to read, and he said, well, Plato, I think it's a better character. And my dad saw that interview with me and said, see, he knew Plato was the title character too. So, again, that is my perspective on this. What do you think? As a fan of Sal Mineo, you're watching this, you've seen Rebel Without a Cause, likely. I'm not going to assume that everybody has. But what do you think? I mean, did you get that feeling that he was the title character? If you disagree with me, share that too. I'd like to have that conversation. And I will see you next time. There's something straight out of my mind. In general, we're about Sal Mineo. Thank you for watching, and please help support Cats Haven Cat Rescue by purchasing either of the items at the links below.